The prison ship floated in the darkness of space like a metal coffin. Inside, Tay Park pressed his face against the cold window and watched his friend die. June's body tumbled through the emptiness, growing smaller and smaller until he disappeared completely. The young pilot had only asked for water. That was his crime. Captain Hyun had decided that was enough reason to kill him. Tae's hands shook with anger. He pulled away from the window and walked back to his cell. The metal floor was cold under his bare feet. Every step echoed in the empty hallway. He had been on this ship for 3 months, and every day was worse than the last. Captain Hyun hated humans. Everyone knew it. The tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms walked through the prison like he owned every breath the prisoners took. He probably thought he did. To him, humans were nothing. They were trash. They were mistakes that the galaxy had to tolerate. Tae sat on his metal bed and stared at the wall. He remembered why he was here. The Coalition supply depot, the weapons they were selling to pirates. He had destroyed it all, thinking he was doing the right thing. He had evidence. He had proof. But nobody cared about proof when a human was the one showing it. The door to his cell suddenly opened. Tae looked up to see Dr. Minji Choi standing there. She was the only other human on the ship, a scientist who had asked too many questions about where certain aliens were disappearing to. Her face was tired, but her eyes were still sharp. "They're coming for you next," she whispered quickly. "Hyun knows you tried to access the communication system." Tae's stomach dropped. He had been so careful. 2 nights ago, he had snuck into the maintenance area and tried to send a message to Earth. He had wanted to tell someone about what was happening on this ship. About June. About all the others who had died for no reason. How did he find out? Tae asked. Does it matter? Minji looked over her shoulder nervously. Listen to me. When they take you, they're going to give you the descent. Do you know what that is? Tae shook his head. They drop prisoners onto Karvos Prime. It's a death world. The worst kind. There are things down there that can tear through steel. The apex predator is called a Ravex. Nobody who gets dropped there lives more than a few hours. The words hit Tae like a punch. A death sentence, of course. Why would they waste time with a trial when they could just throw him away? I'm sorry, Minji said softly. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small metal box. Take this. It's not much. Some medical supplies. A water purifier. A protein bar. Hide it. Tae took the box and slipped it into his shirt. Why are you helping me? Because we're human, Minji said. We don't give up, we adapt. Remember that, Tae. No matter what happens down there, you adapt. Before he could respond, heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. Minji's eyes went wide. She stepped back as 4 guards appeared behind her. They were Valorians, the same species as Captain Hyun. Their faces showed no emotion at all. Prisoner Taeyang Park, one of them announced. You are hereby sentenced to the descent for attempted sabotage and conspiracy against the Galactic Coalition. There was no trial, Tae said, standing up slowly. Trials are for citizens. You are a prisoner. There is a difference. They grabbed him by the arms and dragged him out of the cell. Tae didn't fight. What was the point? He caught one last look at Minji's face. She mouthed 2 words. Stay alive. The guards pulled him through the winding corridors of the ship. Other prisoners watched through their cell windows. Some looked sad. Others looked relieved it wasn't them. Tae understood both feelings. They brought him to the drop bay. It was a huge room filled with small pods that looked like metal eggs. Each one was designed to carry a single person down to a planet's surface. They were meant for emergency evacuations, but the Coalition had found another use for them. Captain Hyun was waiting there. His forearms were crossed over his chest and his face showed something that might have been pleasure. The human who thought he could be a hero, he said. Do you know how many of your kind I have sent to Karvos Prime? 12. You will be the 13th. Did any of them deserve it? Tae asked. Does it matter? Hyun smiled, showing his sharp teeth. You humans are all the same. You think you are special. You think the galaxy needs you, but you are just animals. Dangerous animals that need to be put down. Then why not just kill me here? Because this is more fun, Hyun said simply. And because it sends a message. When other prisoners hear how you died screaming in a Ravex nest, they will learn to behave. The guards forced Tae into one of the pods. The inside was barely big enough for him to sit. There were straps to hold him in place and a small window to see outside. Nothing else. No parachute. No emergency beacon. Just a metal box designed to crash. The Ravex is fascinating, Hyun said as they closed the pod door. It is the perfect killer. Fast, strong, intelligent enough to hunt but not intelligent enough to reason with. Your scientists wanted to study them once. We told you no. Now you will get a very close look. The door sealed shut with a hiss. Tae could hear his own breathing in the small space. His heart was pounding so hard he thought it might break through his chest. Through the window he saw Hyun give a signal. The floor beneath the pod opened up. For a moment Tae felt weightless. Then gravity grabbed him and he was falling. The pod spun as it entered the atmosphere of Karvos Prime. Through the window, Tae could see fire. The heat shield was working, barely. The metal around him groaned and shrieked. He gripped the straps as hard as he could and tried not to scream. The world outside the window changed from black to orange to dark green. Trees. He was heading toward trees, giant ones that looked like they had grown for 1,000 years. The pod smashed through branches, each impact throwing him against the straps. Then came the final crash. Metal screamed. Tae's head snapped forward. Everything went dark. When he opened his eyes again, he was lying in something that looked like a nest. But it wasn't made of sticks and leaves. It was made of bones. Huge bones, bigger than any animal he had ever seen. And between the bones were pieces of metal from old ships that had crashed here long ago. Tae tried to move and immediately felt pain shoot through his chest. Broken ribs? Maybe 3 of them. He reached into his shirt and felt relief when his fingers touched Minji's metal box. It was still there, then he heard it. A sound that made his blood turn to ice. It was breathing. Deep and slow and very, very close. Something was in the nest with him. Tae turned his head slowly and saw golden eyes staring at him from the shadows. They were the size of dinner plates and they were watching his every move. The Ravex had found him. Tae didn't move. Every muscle in his body wanted to run, but he forced himself to stay completely still. The golden eyes blinked once, twice, and then the creature stepped into the light. It was bigger than anything Tae had ever seen. 12 feet tall, maybe more. 6 legs, each one thick with muscle and ending in claws that looked like they could tear through stone. Its body was covered in dark scales that shimmered with strange purple light. The head was massive, with a mouth full of teeth designed for killing. This was a Ravex, the apex predator of Karvos Prime. The thing that had killed 12 humans before him. But something was wrong. The creature was limping. Its back right leg dragged slightly as it moved, and Tae could see dark blood staining the scales around a deep wound. The injury looked bad. Really bad. The flesh around it was swollen and had turned a sick green color. Infection. The Ravex moved closer and Tae could smell it now. It smelled like metal and earth and something else he couldn't identify. The creature lowered its huge head until its nose was inches from Tae's face. It sniffed once, then made a low rumbling sound deep in its throat. Tae's mind raced. He was going to die. There was no question about that. But maybe he could choose how. Maybe he didn't have to die as prey. Slowly, carefully, he raised his hands so the Ravex could see them. Empty. No weapons. No threat. The creature's eyes followed his movement, but it didn't attack. Easy, Tae whispered. His voice shook, but he kept talking. I'm not going to hurt you. Not that I could, but still. Easy. The Ravex tilted its head almost like it was curious. Then it turned and limped away to the far side of the nest. It lay down heavily, and Tae heard it make a sound that might have been pain. That wound was killing it. Tae could see that now. Without treatment, the infection would spread. Even an apex predator could die from something like that. He thought about Minji's words. Adapt. That's what humans did. They adapted. Tae pulled the metal box from his shirt and opened it with shaking hands. Inside was exactly what Minji had said. Medical supplies. Not much, but maybe enough. Bandages, antiseptic, a small surgical knife, some antibiotic pills that worked on most life forms. This was insane. This was the stupidest idea he had ever had. But what else was he going to do? Wait to die? At least this way he would die trying something. He stood up slowly, and the pain in his ribs nearly made him fall. He took a deep breath and started walking toward the Ravex. Each step felt like it might be his last. The creature watched him approach with those huge golden eyes. It growled low and warning, I know, Tae said softly. I know you could kill me right now, but that leg is going to kill you if someone doesn't help. So here's the deal. Let me look at it. If you don't like what I'm doing, you can eat me. Fair? The Ravix just stared at him. Tay took that as permission to keep going. When he got close to the wounded leg, he knelt down carefully. The smell of the infection was worse up close. The wound went deep into the muscle, and he could see something lodged in there. A piece of bone, maybe from another creature, a fight. The Ravix had won the fight but gotten hurt doing it. Okay, Tay said, more to himself than the creature. I need to clean this out. It's going to hurt. Try not to eat me. He opened the antiseptic bottle and poured some on his hands. Then, moving as gently as he could, he touched the edge of the wound. The Ravix's whole body tensed. It made a sound that was half growl, half whimper. But it didn't attack. Tay worked slowly. First, he used the surgical knife to carefully remove the bone fragment. His hands were steady despite his fear. Years in the military had taught him how to do field medicine. He had just never done it on an alien predator before. The Ravix's breathing got heavier. Its claws dug into the ground, leaving deep marks, but it stayed still. Good, Tay murmured. You're doing good. Almost done with the worst part. He cleaned the wound as thoroughly as he could using most of the antiseptic. The infection was bad, but it hadn't spread to the bone yet. That was lucky. He crushed 2 antibiotic pills and mixed them with a little water to make a paste, then packed it into the wound. Finally, he wrapped the whole thing in bandages. It took 3 hours. By the time he was done, Tay's hands were covered in blood and his whole body was shaking from exhaustion and pain. He stepped back and nearly collapsed. There, he said. That's all I can do. The rest is up to you. The Ravix stood up slowly. It tested the injured leg, putting a little weight on it. Then it looked at Tay for a long moment. Those golden eyes seemed to see right through him. Then the creature turned and walked away, disappearing into the dark forest beyond the nest. Tay let out a breath he didn't know he had been holding. He was alive. Somehow, impossibly, he was still alive. He found a corner of the nest that looked relatively clean and sat down. Every part of his body hurt. His ribs screamed with every breath. He was hungry, thirsty, and stranded on a death world, but he was alive. He must have fallen asleep because the next thing he knew, something was pushing against his arm. Tay's eyes snapped open and he saw the Ravix standing over him. In its mouth was the body of some kind of animal. 6 legs covered in fur about the size of a large dog. The Ravix dropped the dead animal in front of Tay, then stepped back. It sat down and watched him expectantly, an offering. The creature was giving him food. Tay stared at the dead animal, then at the Ravix, then back at the animal. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten in almost 2 days. The protein bar in Minji's kit wouldn't last forever. Thank you, he said quietly. He used the surgical knife to cut into the animal. The meat was strange-looking, purple and tough, but it was meat. He found some dry wood in the nest and managed to start a small fire using a piece of metal and some friction. The smell of cooking meat filled the nest. The Ravix watched the whole time with what Tay could only describe as curiosity. When the meat was cooked, Tay ate. It didn't taste great, but it was food. He was going to survive another day. After he finished eating, Tay looked at the Ravix. The creature's purple scales glowed softly in the firelight. Those markings were beautiful in a strange way. I'm going to call you Bora, Tay said. It means purple. Where I come from, names are important. They mean you matter. Bora tilted her head again, that same curious gesture. Then she lay down near the fire, close enough to share its warmth, but far enough to give Tay space. For the first time since he had been dropped here, Tay smiled. He was supposed to be dead. Captain Hyun had sent him here to die screaming and alone. But he wasn't alone anymore. He had made a friend in the most impossible place, and somehow that changed everything. 6 weeks passed on Karvas Prime and Tay was still alive. More than that, he was actually living. The nest had become his home. He had built walls from pieces of crashed ships and made a roof from large leaves that didn't dissolve in the acidic rain. He had a fire pit, a water collection system, and even a small garden where he tried to grow some of the edible plants he had found in the forest. Bora's leg had healed completely. The infection was gone and the creature moved like the powerful predator she was meant to be. But she never went far from the nest. Every morning she would go hunting and come back with food. Every evening she would circle the territory, marking it as her own. And every night she would sleep near Tay's fire. Tay had learned so much about her. Bora wasn't just an animal. She was smart. Really smart. She understood when he talked to her. She learned patterns. She even seemed to have a sense of humor, once stealing his shoe and making him chase her around the nest before giving it back. But something bothered Tay. Bora was young, he had realized. The way she acted, the size of her teeth, even the sound she made. She was barely an adult. So where was her family? Where was her pack? He found the answer 3 weeks into his stay on Karvos Prime. While exploring the forest with Bora, he discovered a clearing that had been burned. Not by natural fire. The scorch marks were too precise, too organized. This was weapons fire, military grade, and in the center of the clearing were bones. Dozens of them. Huge skeletons that could only belong to Raveks. Adults, children, all dead. Tay felt sick. He knelt down and touched one of the skulls. It had a hole in it. A clean hole. From a plasma weapon. "They killed your family," he said quietly. Bora stood beside him, her golden eyes fixed on the bones. She made a low sound, almost like sadness. "The Coalition did this. They murdered your entire pack." That night, Tay couldn't sleep. He kept seeing those bones. Those holes. This wasn't about dangerous predators. This was genocide. The Coalition had cleared out the Raveks to make room for something. Mining, probably. There were valuable minerals on Karvos Prime. He had read about it in the prison ship's database. They had killed an entire intelligent species just to dig up rocks. The anger that filled Tay was like fire. He had been sent here to die for exposing corruption, and now he had found something even worse. But what could he do? He was one human on a death world with no way to contact anyone. Then he remembered the crashed ships. The nest was full of salvage. And where there was salvage, there might be working technology. Tay spent the next 2 weeks searching through every piece of wreckage in Bora's territory. He found power cells, communication equipment, and even parts of a quantum transmitter. Most of it was broken, but he was an engineer. He knew how to fix things. He worked every day, taking apart components and putting them back together in new ways. Bora watched with interest, sometimes bringing him pieces of metal she found in the forest. She seemed to understand that what he was doing was important. Finally, after 14 days of constant work, Tay had something that might work. A makeshift communication device cobbled together from a dozen different ships. It wouldn't be able to send much. Just a short burst of data. But maybe that would be enough. He recorded a message. He talked about the prison ship, about Captain Hyun, about June and all the others who had died, and most importantly, he talked about the Raveks, about the genocide, about the cover-up. Then he attached video files, footage of the bone field, footage of Bora showing her intelligence, footage of everything the Coalition had tried to hide. He powered up the transmitter and sent the burst transmission into space. Then he waited. Somewhere in the galaxy, on a small station orbiting a forgotten moon, a man named Daehyun was monitoring Coalition frequencies. He was part of a resistance group, people who believed the Coalition had become corrupt. They listened to transmissions looking for evidence. When Tay's message came through, Daehyun nearly fell out of his chair. "Yoonji," he shouted. "Get in here!" Yoonji ran into the room. She was the group's communications specialist, and she could crack any code. "What is it?" "A message. From Karvos Prime, from a human. That's impossible. Nobody survives Karvos Prime." "Watch this," Daehyun said, playing the video files. They watched in silence as Tay's face appeared on the screen. They watched him explain everything. They watched footage of Bora, of the bones, of the evidence of genocide. "This changes everything," Yoonji whispered. "If we can get this to the Coalition Council, they'll bury it. You know they will. Not if we make it public first." Yoonji's fingers flew over the keyboard. "I can boost this signal. Send it everywhere. Every Coalition channel, every news network, every public forum. They can't bury what everyone has already seen." "Do it," Daehyun said. Within hours, Tay's message had spread across Coalition space. Millions of beings watched the human who had survived the impossible. They saw him standing beside a Raveks, alive and healthy. They saw the evidence of war crimes, and they started asking questions. On the prison ship Eternal Judgment, Captain Hyun watched the video with growing horror. This was impossible. The humans should be dead. They should all be dead. But there he was, not just alive, but thriving. And now everyone knew what had happened on Karvos Prime. "Get Commander Seok," Hyun ordered his crew. Now, Commander Seok arrived within hours. He was Hyun's superior, a high-ranking Coalition officer. He watched the video with a blank expression. "You told me the Raveks were non-intelligent animals. Seok said quietly. They are, Hyun insisted. This human is lying. He's manipulating the footage. You can't trust. The council has called an emergency session. They want answers. Seok turned to face Hyun. They want to know why there was a military operation on Karvos Prime that was never authorized. They want to know why prisoners are being executed without trial. And they want to know why a human is alive on a planet you assured them would kill anything in hours. Hyun felt his blood turn cold. What are you saying? I'm saying you need to fix this immediately. Send a strike team to Karvos Prime. Kill the human. Kill the Ravix. Destroy all evidence. Do whatever you have to do. That will be seen as, I don't care what it's seen as. Sook's voice was sharp. You created this mess. You clean it up. Or I will find someone who can. Hyun nodded slowly. He turned to his crew. Prepare the dropships. Full military loadout. Combat mechs. Heavy weapons. I want that human dead by tomorrow. On Karvos Prime, Tae sat by his fire and watched the stars. He didn't know his message had been received. He didn't know it had gone viral. He didn't know that help was coming, but he did know that something was about to change. He could feel it. Bora felt it too. She stood at the edge of the nest staring at the sky. The purple markings on her scales glowed brighter than usual. Then she made a sound Tae had never heard before. It was loud, echoing across the forest like a call. And in the distance something answered, then something else, and another. And another. Tae stood up slowly. Bora, what's happening? But he already knew. Bora hadn't been alone. Her family wasn't all dead. Some had survived. Some had hidden in caves and deep forests waiting, and now they were coming home. The Coalition Council chambers were in chaos. Representatives from 47 species shouted over each other, their translators creating a mess of overlapping voices. On every screen in the room, Ty's video played on repeat. Ambassador Junho stood at his podium waiting for silence. He was the human representative, and he had been fighting for prisoner rights for years. Now he finally had the evidence he needed. Order, the council speaker demanded, slamming her gavel. We will have order. The room slowly quieted. Junho took a deep breath and began to speak. Members of the council, what you have seen is not a fabrication. Our intelligence has confirmed that the human in this video is Taeyang Park, a prisoner who was sentenced to death on Karvos Prime 6 weeks ago. He should be dead. The fact that he is not only alive but has successfully communicated with the species we declared non-intelligent raises serious questions. Questions? Another ambassador stood up. I have questions. Why was there a military operation on Karvos Prime? Who authorized it? And why were we told the Ravix were mindless beasts? A Valorian representative stood. The Ravix are dangerous predators. The operation was a necessary safety measure. Safety for whom? Junho interrupted. Or should I say safety for which mining operations? We have evidence that the Ravix nesting grounds were destroyed to make way for illegal mineral extraction. Evidence that was covered up and classified. The room erupted again. Junho pressed on, his voice cutting through the noise. And let us not forget the treatment of prisoners. Taeyang Park was sentenced to death without trial. A human named June was executed for asking for water. How many others have died on that prison ship? How many more cover-ups are we going to ignore? On the prison ship, Dr. Minji Choi watched the council broadcast from her cell. She had been questioned for hours about Tae. They wanted to know if she had helped him, if she knew about his communication device. She had told them nothing. Now 2 guards appeared at her cell door. Dr. Choi, you're being transferred to the council chambers. They want your testimony. Minji felt hope for the first time in months. She followed the guards to a shuttle, and within hours, she was standing in front of the entire Coalition Council. Dr. Choi, Ambassador Junho said gently, please tell the council what you know about Taeyang Park. Minji took a deep breath. Tae is a good man. He was imprisoned for exposing weapons trafficking within the Coalition. He destroyed a supply depot that was selling military equipment to pirates. Instead of investigating his claims, they sent him to that prison ship. Captain Hyun has been executing prisoners without cause for years. I have documented 17 cases, including June's murder. She pulled out a data chip. This contains all my records, deaths, torture, illegal experiments. All of it happening on a Coalition ship while everyone looked the other way. The council speaker took the chip. These are serious accusations. They are also true, Minji said firmly. And now Captain Hyun is planning to launch a military strike on Karvos Prime. He wants to kill Tay and destroy all evidence. If you don't stop him, you'll be complicit in another massacre. But it was too late. At that moment, dropships were already descending through the atmosphere of Karvos Prime. Tay saw them coming. Dozens of ships, military-grade, armed to the teeth. They weren't here to rescue him. They were here to silence him. "Bora," he shouted. "We need to move, now." But Bora didn't run. She stood at the edge of the nest and made that loud calling sound again, the sound that had brought answers the night before, and they came. From the forest emerged Ravex. Not just one or two. Dozens of them. Males, females, juveniles. They had survived the genocide by hiding, by splitting up, by staying silent. But they were silent no more. Bora's call had told them something important. A human had helped her. A human had healed her. A human was different. The dropships landed in a clearing half a mile from the nest. Combat mechs stomped out, each one 20 feet tall and armed with plasma cannons. Soldiers in armor followed, weapons ready. Captain Hyun's voice came over their comms. "Find the human. Find the Ravex. Kill them both. Leave no evidence." The strike team moved through the forest. They expected an easy mission. One human, maybe one predator. Nothing they couldn't handle. They were wrong. The first mech made it 50 feet before a Ravex leaped from the trees and tore into its power core. The machine collapsed, sparking and dead. Soldiers opened fire, but the Ravex were too fast. They moved like shadows, striking from angles the soldiers couldn't predict. More Ravex appeared. They coordinated their attacks, working together like a military unit. One would draw fire while others flanked. They used the terrain, the thick trees, even the acidic rivers to their advantage. The soldiers retreated, but there was nowhere to go. They were surrounded. Then the Ravex pack parted and Tay walked through them. He stood in the middle of the clearing, unarmed, with Bora at his side. Dozens of apex predators stood behind him, golden eyes glowing in the dim light. "Stop," Tay shouted. "Just stop." The strike team leader stared at him in disbelief. A human, alive, protected by Ravex. It was impossible. "Captain Hyun sent you to kill me," Tay said. "Because I told the truth. Because I showed what he did here, but you don't have to follow those orders. You can choose to do the right thing." "We have orders," the leader said, but his voice was uncertain. "Orders to commit genocide? Orders to murder an unarmed man? Is that what the coalition stands for now?" Tay stepped forward. "Look around you. These aren't mindless beasts. They're intelligent. They have families. They have society. Everything you were told about them was a lie." The strike team leader looked at the Ravex surrounding him. They weren't attacking. They were just watching, waiting. If they wanted to kill his team, they already could have. His comm crackled. "Strike leader, this is Commander Seok. Stand down." "Repeat, stand down. The council has issued a halt order. You are to return to the ship immediately." The leader let out a breath. "You heard the order. Everyone back to the ships." The soldiers retreated slowly, keeping their weapons ready but not firing. The Ravex let them go. Within minutes, the dropships were lifting off, leaving Tay standing in the clearing with his unlikely family. In the council chambers, Ambassador Junho watched the live feed from the strike team's cameras. The whole council had seen it. A human, alive and healthy, commanding the respect of the most dangerous predators in known space. "I move for an immediate investigation," Junho said, "into Captain Hyun, into the Karvos Prime operations, and into the treatment of all prisoners on coalition ships." "Seconded," said Councillor Nari, a longtime ally. The vote was unanimous. On the prison ship, Captain Hyun watched his career end in real time. Security officers entered the bridge and placed him in restraints. "Captain Hyun," Commander Seok said coldly, "you are under arrest for war crimes, murder, and conspiracy to commit genocide. You have the right to—" Hyun didn't hear the rest. He was too busy thinking about the human who had survived. The human who had ruined everything. On Karvos Prime, Tay sat down heavily. His hands were shaking. Bora pressed her massive head against his shoulder. A gesture of comfort he had learned meant she cared. "We did it," he whispered. "I think we actually did it." Around him, the Ravex pack settled down. They were wary of him, but they trusted Bora. And Bora trusted this strange small human who had healed her and given her a name. Tomorrow would bring more changes. More questions. But tonight, Tay was alive. He was safe. and he was exactly where he belonged. 6 months had passed since the world learned about Taeyang Park and the Ravex of Karvas Prime. 6 months since everything changed. Tay stood on the cliff, overlooking his valley, and watched the morning. Sun turned the bioluminescent forest 100 different colors. Behind him, his research station buzzed with activity. Scientists from 20 different species worked together, learning about the Ravex, about the ecosystem, about everything the Coalition had tried to destroy. Karvas Prime was no longer a death world. It was a protected world, the first of its kind, Tay. A voice called from the station. Dr. Minji Choi walked out onto the cliff, a smile on her face. She had been released from prison after the investigation cleared her of all charges. Now she ran the Coalition's Xenobiology Ethics Committee, making sure what happened to the Ravex never happened again. "You have visitors," she said. Tay turned and saw a shuttle landing near the station. The door opened and several people stepped out. Some were human. Others were aliens he recognized from the council broadcasts. And leading them was a young woman with kind eyes. "Ambassador Junho sent them," Minji explained. "They want to learn about the Ravex, about peaceful first contact. Your story has changed how the Coalition thinks about underdeveloped worlds." Tay walked down to meet the visitors. Bora followed him as she always did. She was fully grown now, nearly 15 feet tall, powerful and graceful. The visitors stopped when they saw her, fear clear on their faces. "It's okay," Tay said. "Bora, say hello." Bora lowered her head and made a soft rumbling sound. It was the Ravex greeting, something Tay had learned meant, "I see you and mean no harm." The young woman stepped forward cautiously. "My name is Hana," she said. "I'm an anthropologist. I've studied your reports for months. What you've done here is incredible." "I didn't do much," Tay said. "I just treated her like a person instead of a monster." "That's exactly what makes it incredible," Hana replied. "The Coalition has been expanding for centuries, and we always assumed we were the only intelligent species that mattered. You proved that wrong." Over the next few hours, Tay showed the visitors around. He showed them the Ravex teaching their young, using complex sounds and bioluminescent patterns to communicate. He showed them the art in the caves, proof that Ravex culture went back thousands of years. He showed them everything that proved these creatures deserved respect and protection. "They even have a written language," Minji explained, pointing to markings on the cave walls. "It's based on light patterns. They can see spectrums we can't, so their writing is invisible to most species. That's why we missed it before." Hana stared at the markings in awe. "Has anyone tried to learn it?" "Tay has," Minji said proudly. "He's the only human who can read it. The Ravex have been teaching him." As they walked back to the station, a young Ravex approached. It was smaller than Bora, with brighter purple markings. It walked right up to Hana and sniffed her curiously. "This is Bora's sibling," Tay explained. "We haven't named them yet. The Ravex don't use names the way we do. But this one seems to like you." Hana reached out slowly and touched the Ravex's scaled snout. The creature made a pleased sound and pressed closer. Tears formed in Hana's eyes. "I want to stay," she said suddenly. "I want to learn from them. I want to help." "Then stay," Tay said simply. "That's what this place is for, understanding, building bridges." That evening, Tay sat with Dr. Choi on the cliff again. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. In the valley below, they could see Ravex moving through the forest. The pack had grown. Cubs played near the river while adults hunted. Life continued as it should. "The council passed new legislation today," Minji said. "The Karvas Protection Act. Any world with signs of intelligent life is now protected from exploitation. No mining, no military operations, no interference without extensive study and approval. Because of what happened here, because of what you did here." Minji looked at him. "You know you're a legend now, right? The human who survived Karvas Prime, who befriended the apex predator, who changed galactic law." Tay shook his head. "I'm just a guy who didn't want to die. You're more than that. You're proof that humans belong in the galaxy, not as warriors or conquerors, but as bridges. You showed everyone that understanding is more powerful than fear." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Minji asked the question she had been holding back. "Do you ever think about going home? Back to Earth?" Tay looked at the valley, at the forest, at the research station where humans and aliens worked together. He looked at Bora, who was playing with her nibblings near the cliff edge. The cubs tackled her, and she gently rolled them over with her massive paws, careful not to hurt them. "I am home," Tay said quietly. "This is what humanity does best. We find family wherever we go. We adapt, we survive. We build connections even when everyone says it's impossible." He smiled. "Besides, Bora would miss me." As if she heard her name, Bora looked up. Her golden eyes met Tay's across the distance. She made a soft sound that he had learned meant affection. Then she went back to playing with the cubs. "Captain Hyun was sentenced today," Minji said. "Life in prison. Real prison with oversight and regulations. Because of you, they've reformed the entire prison system. Humans have rights now. Real rights, and what about the others? The ones who helped him? Most are facing charges. Commander Seok took responsibility and resigned. But here's the interesting part. He sent you a message." Minji pulled out a data pad. He said he was sorry. That he had stopped seeing prisoners as people. That watching you survive made him remember what the coalition was supposed to stand for. Tay took the data pad and read the message. It was short but sincere. An apology and a promise to do better. "People can change," Tay said. "I have to believe that. Otherwise, what's the point?" Over the next few weeks, more visitors came to Karvas Prime. Some were scientists. Others were diplomats learning about peaceful first contact. A few were former prisoners who wanted to thank Tay for exposing the truth. The station grew, and with it, understanding. Hana stayed as she promised. She bonded with Bora's sibling the same way Tay had bonded with Bora. Soon she could read the Ravex light patterns and understand their sounds. The Ravex accepted her, just as they had accepted Tay. One night, Tay sat by the fire outside the station. Bora lay beside him, her massive body warm against the cool evening air. In the distance, he could hear Ravex singing. They did that sometimes at night, a chorus of sounds and lights that told stories of the past and dreams of the future. Minji sat down on his other side. "Ambassador Junho sent another message. He wants you to come to the Coalition Council, to speak about your experience, to help shape new policies. Maybe someday," Tay said, "but not yet. There's still too much to learn here, too much to document, and honestly, I don't want to leave. I understand." Minji looked up at the stars. "You know what the best part is? Your story is already inspiring others. Humans on other worlds are trying to understand instead of conquer. They're asking questions instead of making assumptions. One person can change so much." Tay scratched behind Bora's armored head right where she liked it. The huge predator made a sound like a cat's purr, deep and rumbling. "I was supposed to die here," he said softly. "Captain Hyun thought he was sending me to hell. But instead I found family, purpose, home. Funny how things work out." "Not funny," Minji corrected. "Human, that's what makes us special. We turn death sentences into new beginnings. We make friends with monsters. We adapt and we survive and we never give up." Tay smiled. She was right. That was humanity's real strength. Not weapons or technology or conquest. It was the ability to see possibility where others saw only danger. To offer kindness when the galaxy expected violence. To choose understanding over fear. In the valley below, Ravex cubs tumbled through the glowing grass, learning and playing and growing. Human scientists worked alongside alien colleagues, all of them focused on protecting this world and its people. And on a cliff overlooking it all, a former prisoner and an apex predator sat together watching the stars come out. The galaxy had changed. And it had changed because one human refused to give up, refused to accept that survival meant becoming a monster, refused to see a wounded creature as anything other than someone who needed help. Tay had survived Karvas Prime. But more than that, he had shown everyone what survival could mean. Not just staying alive, but building something better, making family where there was none, finding hope in the darkest places. That was the real story. Not the survival, but what came after. The bonds formed. The laws changed. The galaxy learning, slowly, that intelligence came in many forms and deserved respect in all of them. Bora nudged Tay's shoulder with her massive head. He laughed and leaned against her. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new visitors, new lessons. But tonight everything was perfect. He was home. He was safe. And he was exactly where he belonged,